Hi, I was very excited to finally yesterday get round to seeing the new David Cronenberg film, Crimes of the Future. Cronenberg hasn't released a film in the last 8 years since Maps to the Stars, and he said that he's had difficulty getting projects financed in the past, and his work is not really particularly commercial, being weird intellectual horror or difficult, dark psychological drama. So it's a pleasure that he's got a new film out, a Greek Canadian co production filmed on location in Athens, and it's very much a Cronenberg film. It is set at some indeterminate point in the near future where a condition has started to develop in humanity referred to as accelerated evolution syndrome. The human body is changing, mutating, seemingly developing new organs, new functions, as well as the disappearance of physical pain and the notion of infectious disease. Our main character is Saul Tenser, a performance artist who, along with his partner Caprice, uh, conducts performances in which she opens him and removes newly developed vestigial organs whose purpose remains unknown. But Tenser gets involved with both the organ registration office, which is keeping an eye on the development of the human body, in order to weed out those who are not conforming to what is decreed as being human, and also a new group who have modified their bodies to be able to physically process industrial waste as food. It's a really interesting film, and I use the word interesting because I can't call it. Well, I could call it entertaining. It's just more interesting to think about, I think, than it is to watch. It's definitely Cronenberg in his element. It's a fascinating world that he's developed. I think just shooting in rundown areas of Athens, but with characters who are generally seemingly Anglophones. There's American, Canadian, um, I think a couple of British actors in there as well. Um, but the ideas about the development of the body, the government regulation of biology, for example, as we're seeing now in government attitudes towards transgender people and conversion therapy and that kind of stupidity and deciding what isn't real in terms of human biology, rather than just accepting people for who they are. Um, I find that really interesting. The notion of body modification as artistic performance, I think, is interesting. There's lots to really wrap your head around, along with ideas of conspiracy of underground cells, which is stuff that goes back to scanners and some of his much earlier work. Viggo Mortensen as Tenser is he is characterized by being in constant pain. So he's always coughing and spluttering and sort of twisting and jerking around. He has to have all these this special machinery to help him function as a human being. To help his body function. He has to have a special bed that responds to his body chemistry so that he can sleep properly. There's a special chair that he sits in that jerks him around so that he can digest food properly. And even then, he finds it almost impossible. The key appears to be this new organization um, who can, as I say, ingest industrial waste and plastics. And they're the son of the cell's leader, who apparently has developed that ability from birth. Um, and they go around eating these what appear at first to be sort of plastic, as a purple chocolate bars, but are in fact reprocessed plastic waste. One normal person tries to eat one because everyone's always cutting each other and modifying their bodies and having things grafted on or bits cut off because there's no pain, there's no infectious disease anymore. It doesn't matter. But he eats one and immediately dies. um, there is some interesting undercutting of ideas. There's one figure that's featured prominently in the publicity campaign of someone who's had his eyes and mouth sewn shut, but has had ears grafted all over his body as a performance art piece, and then says, "Oh, the time has ended where we listen, where we speak, and where we look. Now we have to listen." And then he starts dancing, and Tenser says, "This guy's just a poser. Those ears don't even work." I thought was a nice sort of undercutting of, "Oh, it's so weird and creepy." Nah, that guy's just a show off. The performances are weird, as I say. Mortensen is playing it as serious as he can. Léa Seydoux as Caprice is much more restrained and more of a neutral character, I think. Um, Kristen Stewart has a particularly noticeable supporting role as one of the bureaucrats from the National Organ Registry, who is so nervy and on edge and twitchy and anxious, and it's a really odd, eccentric performance. But it fits in with the whole strange world that we're being presented with, where the norms that we expect, disease, pain, no longer exist. The body is evolving, regardless of what people are trying to do about it. The environment is broken to such an extent that our physical biology is changing to match our surroundings, and evolution is taking over. So, people who deny evolution, people who deny science, again, it all rolls into current social thinking of the way society has become polarized. It's, as I say, it's a really interesting film. Its ideas are creative and original. The presentation is engaging and unusual. As I say, filming in rundown bits of Athens is um, something that you would not expect. Again, it's Cronenberg doing anything he can to avoid filming in America, although I suspect that having a large influx of Greek financing helped a great deal. But it's difficult to get through. It's a little slow. Um, it's a little dry. There's very little humor in it, as I say. It's all about the ideas. It's all about the concepts, and the concepts and the ideas are fascinating. And you could write a thesis about the movie, and you could talk about it endlessly. But actually, watching the movie and absorbing the ideas is an effort. You really feel like you're getting something out of it, like it's you're getting a lecture from from a really engaging, forward-thinking professor, but it still feels like a lecture, regardless of how well structured and how well presented it is. It would feel a little better if it was more like a real movie. But even so, it's something very unusual, something quite unique in the current film landscape. It is such a pleasure to have David Cronenberg back, and this isn't even going to be his last film because he's got another one in preparation to shoot next year. So this is not even his swan song. But I would recommend it, but maybe with reservations.